All right, so if we come back to this diagram, we can see that for the communication, we need to have a message, the Java message that can be sent and can be received by the server, right? So we are now defining this Java object, the message, we call it MessagePayload, okay? So we create a message object inside the model, and then we call it MessagePayload. Okay, so because this is we need to serialize it, so better implements a serializable interface. And then we need to have the private field. The first field we need is the client ID. So what is the client ID? Now, for every client, like for example the user client, when the application starts, we need to assign an ID to this client, like we say client user, right? And same here, when the booking is running up, then we need to assign a unique ID to this client, like we said client booking. And same for the payment and etc. As long as you want to have the RPC function available or enabled, every RPC client must have a valid and unique ID. So let's come back. So the ID is used by the server. The server needs to know who sent the request, right? Because when the server grabs the response from the remote service, it needs to return the response back to this consumer, right? So we say this is the consumer ID, okay? Consumer ID. And the next thing is we need to have a message type. But the message type, it should be an enum, right? So we create an enum, message type. So we create an enum. So what's inside the enum? What is inside this message type? So we have how many types of message? We have the first one is register, right? So when the client connects. When the client successfully connected to the server, and immediately after that, the client needs to send a registration message to tell the server its ID and its details, right? So the first type is register. The second is call, okay? So which is the RPC call, the remote procedure call. Then we say call. And forward. Because the message can be forwarded once the RPC request received by the server, this message is going to be forwarded to the producer, right? And the producer, it's the remote service. The producer is a remote service, and it finds out the correct method and call the correct method and produce the result, and the result is returned as a response. Okay. So far we have 4, and there's one more, heartbeat, and which we are going to do later in this course. So we need to make sure the client keeps sending the heartbeat to the server. Make sure that they are active, the channel is active. Otherwise, the channel needs to be cleared, and all the channel information needs to be removed. Okay, so heartbeat needs to be sent periodically. Alright, so that's the message type. So we go back to the payload there. Then we define the message type. And then, okay, so now the next is I define an object which is called payload. So the payload here, I define it can be an RPC request or RPC response. I don't know right? It can be RPC request and I can be RPC response. So I use an object as the type. Otherwise, you cannot just write the fixed type here because RPC request and RPC response, they are different. They are different type. So I can use an object here. All right, so first step, we need to have constructor. The reason we need a constructor is when we use the fastJSON to deserialize or serialize this object, if you don't provide an empty constructor, the process, the conversion, the serialization process may fail. Okay, may fail. So remember, you must have an empty constructor. Okay, so getter and setter, I generated getter and setter for these the client ID for all the private fields. All right, so next we need to define an other object which is called RPC public static class, RpcRequest. And also it needs to be implemented from the serializable interface. Now, I defined the RpcRequest payload inside the message payload, right? Because it's heavily related, it's heavily linked to the message payload. So I defined it as an inner class. And also RpcResponse as well. So the RpcRequest and RpcResponse, they are in the class of the message payload, and right now we can define the inner the private field of the RpcRequest. So first of all, we need to know which remote service you want to call, right? So we need to have a request client ID identified here. So this is, I just give you a clear tip saying this is the producer ID. Okay, this is a producer ID called request client ID. Otherwise, if you don't know what you're calling for, who you're calling for, you cannot initiate this call, right? And then the second one is the request ID. Request ID, we need to find a way to generate a unique one. So every request you send, it must be carrying a unique request ID. It should be unique, okay? Or UUID. You can simply use a UUID. And then we need to give request method simple name. So which method you want to call? And then we need to have which class request class name. So which class you are requested, and in that class, which method you're going to call, you need to know, right? So if you simply provide the method name, it's not enough. You need to identify which class and what method. And the next thing is what kind of return value type. So you need to know the return value, right? And then you need to use an array, string array, param types. And the last one is object array, and this is the params. All right, so why do we need to know the param type? It's very simple. See, the param types, it's the param number and all the param types, it's necessary and essential in the RPC call. Because when you call a method, the method name can be the same, right? But the param types can be different. You can have the same param type, you can have multiple different methods, but have different types of the params, of different number of the params. So if you don't identify, if you don't give a valid param types in this call, what if the remote service have two methods with the same name, same method name? Okay, so you don't know which one you're calling for. So this is the param types is necessary for the RPC call. All right. So for the request, that's all. And remember, you need to give an empty constructor. and getter and setter. You can define that, right? Getter and setter. Okay, so the next one is the response. The response, we can think about that. What kind of the information you want to be carried in the response back to the consumer. So the first one is the request ID. The first one is request ID. The reason I need the request ID is we need to find out, we need to use this request ID to find out who initiated this request. Because you see, when the RPC response going back to the server needs to forward this response back to the consumer, right? So we need to know who initiated the request. So we need a request ID to find out the consumer. And the other one is the result, object result. So the result is an object, of course, and I don't know the type of the result, so I use an object and empty constructor, and then getter and setter. Alright, so now we finished half of it, but we need to find the easiest way to build this message payload. So we can use build a pattern.